Hey, crime connoisseurs. If you're like me, you love diving into a good book. I especially love finding a book about cases we cover. But sometimes it's hard to find the time to sit and read. We live in an on-the-go society. Thankfully, Audible makes it easy to instantly access the books we love without sacrificing our time. With over 180,000 audiobooks and more, you will undoubtedly find one that will grip you and leave you not wanting to pull away while still being able to do other things. You can get a free 30-day trial membership by going to audibletrial.com/ccpod to start listening to your favorite books. That's audibletrial.com/ccpod for your free 30-day trial membership. Hey, all my fellow crime connoisseurs. I'm your host, Grace D. Today's case is one that I have been following since the beginning and have just been captivated by. It's a case that should have made national headlines, but was quickly put on the back burner by the nation and the media because of another case that happened the very next day. We're going back to September of 2021. This is the case of the St. Paul Quadruple Homicide. On Sunday afternoon, September 12, 2021, 63-year-old farmhand Dennis Sheffer was driving a tractor in Sheridan Township, Wisconsin. While on the tractor, Dennis noticed corn stalks had been knocked down and saw vehicle tire tracks. Dennis and the landowner, Neil Schlau, went to inspect the situation in the cornfield. They soon came across a dark-colored SUV parked in the cornfield. They walked over to the Mercedes-Benz SUV and looked inside. Here they found a woman slumped over in the front passenger seat, and there was also a man with his head tipped back and a blank stare in his eyes. Dennis called 911, and the Dunn County Sheriff's Department began their investigation. When investigators arrived, they quickly learned of the gruesome scene. Inside the Mercedes-Benz SUV were not 2, but 4 bodies fatally shot. Blood had pooled beneath the Mercedes-Benz, and there was blood splatter in the rear wheel well, leading investigators to believe that the murders occurred elsewhere and that the bodies had been transported and abandoned at this location. After investigating what happened before and after the bodies were discovered, it was determined that the killings had occurred in St. Paul, Minnesota. The black Mercedes-Benz SUV had Minnesota tags, and inside, along with the bodies, investigators found 6 shell casings and an Arizona identification card that was covered in blood belonging to a man named Anton Suggs. Investigators also found a receipt for the White Squirrel showing a purchase had been made at 1:38 a.m. on September 12, 2021. Investigators recovered phones belonging to each of the victims in the Mercedes-Benz. The victims were 35-year-old Lois Foreman III, 26-year-old Matthew Pettis, 30-year-old Nidajah Flug Presley, and 30-year-old Jasmine Sturm. Jasmine and Matthew were siblings, and Lois and Jasmine were a couple who each had 2 children of their own, and they were starting to blend their family. Matthew had a daughter of his own who was 1.5 years, and he was so excited about her. Nidajah was a mother of 2 children as well. She had a thing going on with the man whose ID was found in the SUV. The Ramsey County Medical Examiner's autopsy report revealed that each victim had been shot in the head at least once. Nidajah was found in the front passenger seat with a gunshot wound that entered her mouth, went through her cervical spine and spinal cord, and exited the back of her head. Matthew had 2 gunshot wounds to the back of his head and a 3rd gunshot wound to his left arm. Lois had a gunshot wound to his face and a gunshot wound to the top of his head. The cause of his death was cerebral lacerations and exsanguination due to gunshot wounds to the head. Jasmine, this one got to me. She had a gunshot wound that entered through and exited her left palm and re-entered her left cheek, transecting her spinal cord. It was as if she had her hand up in hopes that she wouldn't be shot. 3 days later, on Wednesday, September 15th, St. Paul police officers arrested 56-year-old Darren McWright, who goes by the last name Osborne, of St. Paul, Minnesota, in connection to the murders. Osborne was held in Ramsey County Jail. 2 days after this, on September 17th, Osborne's son, 37-year-old Anton Suggs, turned himself into the police in Gilbert, Arizona, after investigators announced he was wanted for questioning. According to Dunn County District Court records, both men were charged with 4 counts of hiding a corpse. On Monday, September 20th, 2021, the St. Paul Police Department announced their department's homicide unit would now lead the investigation. The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, the FBI, and the ATF also worked on this case. The Dunn County Sheriff's Office, which initially took the lead, continued to assist in the case to help bring all parties responsible to justice. Suggs was seen at the same bar as the 4 victims on September 12th, and an employee saw him arguing with a woman resembling Nidija. The employee said Suggs said something about having 6 children and this happening every time he comes back to Minnesota. Investigators believe the 4 victims were killed somewhere along West 7th Street in St. Paul between 3:30 and 3:48 a.m. At 4:30 a.m., Suggs attempted to call his dad, but he didn't pick up. Suggs and his mom showed up at Osborne sometime around 5 a.m. They got into Suggs' mom's Nissan Rogue and drove around for a while before eventually ending up at the mom's house. According to Osborne, he told police Suggs said, quote, "Dad, I need you to drive Mom's car and follow me and don't ask no questions," end quote. Osborne said it's devastating when it's your own kid. He said Suggs told him that the shooting happened in the car on West 7th Street, which is what police suspected. Osborne admitted he gave his son a ride from Wisconsin to Minnesota after they left the Benz in a cornfield. He said that Suggs didn't tell him the bodies were in the SUV until after they returned to Minnesota, and he denied going into the cornfield. Osborne said Suggs told him that he snapped and shot a couple of people. Investigators obtained multiple surveillance videos tracking the movements from the murder to the dumping of the bodies and talked with several witnesses. Witnesses told police that Jasmine, Matthew, and Lois hung out on the patio at Shamrocks, located at 955 7th Street West in St. Paul, after midnight until closing at 1 a.m. on September 12, 2021. Surveillance video from the bar showed Jasmine, Matthew, and Lois walking away from the bar's patio area around 1:26 a.m. An employee at the White Squirrel, located at 974 7th Street West in St. Paul, told investigators that Jasmine and Matthew entered the bar after 1 a.m. on Sunday morning. The employee said a photo of Nidija looked like the woman in the bar with Jasmine. They also said that Nidija was with a man that the witness argued with. The employee picked Suggs out of a photo lineup as the man she argued with in the bar. Another witness told police that she went to Shamrocks and a second bar with Nidija. When they left the second bar, Nidija got in the front passenger seat of a black SUV. The witness said Jasmine got in the back of the black SUV with her brother Matthew. The witness left in their own vehicle, and they said that Nidija did not make any posts on her Snapchat after they left the second bar. Suggs' phone and surveillance videos show that he and the black Mercedes SUV returned to the White Squirrel at about 2:50 a.m. and remained parked until 3:30 a.m. The SUV then drove around West 7th Street before passing a surveillance camera at West 7th and Walnut Street at about 3:48 a.m., where the video shows Nidija slumped over in the front passenger seat. Several hours later, the SUV is seen again on surveillance videos at 7:42 a.m. near University Avenue and Eustis Street, this time with a Nissan Rogue following and Nidija still able to be seen slumped in the front seat. At 9:48 a.m., the SUV is seen at Holiday Gas Station at Snelling Ave North, with Nidija's body in the front seat. Next, Suggs gets out of the SUV and enters the store, clearly visible. With phone tracking data and surveillance videos, investigators were able to follow Suggs and Osborne as they drove around St. Paul for several hours before going to Wisconsin. At 10:06 a.m. on September 12th, cell phone tower data showed that Matthew's phone was in the area of Interstate 94 and Dale Street, heading east towards Wisconsin. At around 10:26 a.m. on September 12th, a Department of Transportation video showed the Mercedes-Benz and Nissan Rogue at the Minnesota and Wisconsin border. Between 10:13 a.m. and 11:16 a.m., Suggs and Osborne's phones only received incoming calls that went straight to voicemail. The phones stayed in the area of Lexington Parkway and Interstate 94. They left their cell phones behind in Minnesota when they drove to Wisconsin in the Mercedes-Benz and Nissan Rogue. Surveillance videos show the Mercedes and the Nissan at a gas station in Wheeler, Wisconsin around 12:08 p.m., the day the bodies were discovered. The gas station is about 10 miles from the cornfield where the Mercedes-Benz was recovered. The Nissan Rogue's driver went into the store, purchased items, and walked to the Mercedes-Benz where he handed something to the driver through the Mercedes driver's window. Suggs' father was identified as the man who drove the Nissan Rogue. Suggs' father also approached and stood at the Mercedes-Benz's open passenger window while it was in the gas station parking lot, contradicting that he did not know that the bodies were in the SUV. They left the gas station in both vehicles, heading in the direction of the cornfield where the Mercedes-Benz would later be discovered. When investigators went to the gas station, they found blood evidence in the parking lot where the Mercedes was parked. On Wednesday, September 22nd, Osborne was charged with aiding an offender in connection with a quadruple homicide. Suggs was charged with 4 counts of second-degree murder. It's now March, and it took 6 months to get Suggs into court for 2 main reasons. At this time, COVID was still delaying courts across the U.S., including Arizona, where Suggs had been since the fall. On top of that, Suggs would not waive extradition, meaning getting him from Scottsdale to Minnesota required more time as authorities went through the appropriate legal processes. According to Ramsey County Undersheriff Mike Martin, 2 Ramsey County Sheriff's deputies went to Arizona, took Suggs into custody, and flew back to Minnesota with him on March 28th. On Tuesday, April 5th, 2022, Suggs appeared in court for his bail hearing. Assistant Ramsey County Attorney Andrew Johnson requested that Suggs' bail be set at $10 million. He cited the seriousness of the offenses and said Suggs was a flight risk. Suggs' attorney, Kevin DeVore, did not make a bail argument during the hearing. Senior Judge Janet Poston set Suggs' bail at $10 million. His trial would be set for March of 2023. On December 9th, 2022, Osborne was sentenced to nearly 5 years in prison. Osborne pleaded guilty to 1 felony count of aiding an offender being an accomplice after the fact as part of a plea agreement. He was sentenced to 58 months in jail with 458 days of credit for time served. Osborne offered a lengthy apology in the courtroom, telling the victims' families he would gladly trade places with the 4 victims. He called them heroes in death and added, quote, "I thank God no one else was killed," end quote. Loved ones wanted to know why Osborne didn't call the police and hold his son accountable. Ashley Jones said, quote, "Absolutely, he has a part in this. If he would have called, as my mother said, their heart was still beating. If there was still blood flowing, one of them could have been saved," end quote. According to the Department of Corrections records, Osborne is expected to be released from prison with time served on November 26, 2024, and then be placed on supervised release. He is currently serving his sentence at Minnesota Correctional Facility, Lino Lakes. Jury selection for Suggs' trial began on March 20th, 2023. In his opening testimony, Assistant Ramsey County Attorney Andrew Johnson, during his opening statement, told the jury, quote, "A camera caught the audio as it was driving by. Boom, 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 boom," end quote. Suggs' attorney, Kevin DeVore, told Judge Japal Harris the defense would defer its opening statement until later in the trial. The prosecution entered into evidence photos of the victims taken by crime scene investigators. The photos showed blood splattered across seats, pooled onto floorboards, and caked on the faces of the victims. Due to the graphic nature of the images, Judge Harris had to call a brief recess after people in the courtroom gallery gasped and sobbed. After the break, Judge Harris addressed the court. He said, quote, "I really and fully appreciate the gravity it is for all of you and how hard it is for you to see what you're seeing," end quote. Another photo was presented as evidence. It was Suggs' Arizona ID on the floor of the SUV, most of it covered in blood. The prosecution then showed the jury a video taken just shortly after noon on September 12th at the Bridgestop gas station in Wheeler, Wisconsin. In the footage, you see a Nissan Rogue pull up, then a black Mercedes. The drivers appeared to exchange something, then the Benz drove away, followed by the Nissan. So just to recap, according to the police investigations, the timeline of events leading to the murders unfolded over a 2 to 3 hour time frame in the early morning hours of September 12th and were presented to the court as follows. 1 a.m. Witnesses told police Jasmine and Lois, who were dating, and Matthew were hanging out on the patio at Shamrock's bar. After 1 a.m., an employee at the White Squirrel Bar told police that Jasmine had come in and that Nidija was with a man who looked like Suggs. 1:38 a.m. Investigators found a receipt for the White Squirrel from a purchase by Lois. A witness told police the group got into the black Mercedes SUV. 2:50 a.m. Suggs returns to the White Squirrel. 3:08 a.m. According to phone data, Lois creates a phone contact for Suggs. 3:30 a.m. Suggs' phone and the Mercedes park for a bit. This is within the time frame that police believe Suggs shot the 4 victims. 3:48 a.m. Surveillance video shows the Mercedes driving west on 7th Street toward the McDonald's near Madison Street. The SUV heads towards Shepherd Road, but returns to 7th Street and heads east. Video surveillance captures the passenger side, and Nidija is slumped over in the seat. 4:30 a.m. Suggs calls his father, Darren Osborne, 56 of St. Paul. 5 a.m. Suggs meets up with his dad. He tells Osborne he shot a couple of people, asks him to follow him in another vehicle so he can get rid of the car, and then give him a ride back. 7:42 a.m. Surveillance video from University Avenue and Eustis Street shows the Mercedes following a Nissan Rogue. Nidija is seen slumped in the same position as she was found dead in hours later. 9:48 a.m. Video from the Holiday gas station at 281 North Snelling Avenue shows the Mercedes at a gas pump. Nidija's body is visible. Suggs entered the store. 10:06 a.m. Cell tower data shows Matthew's phone in the area of I-94 and Dale Street heading east towards Wisconsin. 10:26 a.m., Minnesota Department of Transportation video shows the Mercedes and Nissan at the Minnesota and Wisconsin border. 2:18 p.m., the Mercedes and the 4 bodies are discovered in the Dunn County, Wisconsin cornfield. Nidajah's cousin, Dominique Neal Hill, testified that he sold Suggs the Mercedes-Benz through his parents' small auto dealership a few days before the killings. He said that Suggs gave him half of the $7,000 sale of the SUV and that he would keep the certificate until Suggs gave him the rest of the money. The prosecution's last witness was Suggs' younger brother, Darren Suggs. Darren did not cooperate with the prosecution. When asked if either of his parents ever owned a Nissan, he said he couldn't recall and stated, quote, "I don't see why I'm here," end quote. Darren then exercised his Fifth Amendment right to avoid self-incrimination after the prosecutor asked if he had spoken with his father after the murders. After a recess, Judge Harris said that Darren would be appointed an attorney in order to continue his testimony throughout the trial. Suggs testified that he shot the 4 victims in self-defense because he thought they were going to rob him. Prosecutors said his motive was unclear, but that Suggs meant to kill the victims after a night of drinking in St. Paul. On March 31st, 2023, a jury found Anton Suggs guilty on 4 counts of murder in the second degree of Nidajah Flug Presley, Matthew Pettis, Jasmine Sturm, and Lois Foreman III. On Monday, May 15, 2023, Suggs returned to court to face his sentencing. The prosecution requested a consecutive sentence, while the defense requested a concurrent sentence. 9 people gave victim impact statements, and Suggs had 26 people write to the judge on his behalf. When Suggs was allowed to speak on his behalf during the sentencing, he painted himself as the victim. He said that the 4 were trying to rob him, and he had no choice but to act in self-defense. I'm going to play a clip of his statement to the judge.
I had no beef, no quarrel, or animosity with any one of them. Your Honor, I stand here today as a victim of others' greed and a victim of a wrongful conviction.
Uncover the secrets of your dog's DNA with Wisdom Panel, the world's leading canine genetics test. With a simple cheek swab, Wisdom Panel can reveal your dog's breed, ancestry, health traits, and so much more. Understanding your dog's genetic background can help you provide the best care possible. Whether it's identifying potential health risks, understanding their behavior, or simply satisfying your curiosity about your dog's unique heritage, Wisdom Panel delivers the insights you need. Their state-of-the-art technology analyzes over 350 breeds, types, and varieties, and screens for over 200 genetic health conditions. Plus, their easy-to-understand reports make it simple to learn about your dog's genetics. Join the millions of pet parents discovering their dog's story with Wisdom Panel. Order your kit today and start exploring your dog's DNA. Because every dog has a tale, and Wisdom Panel helps you tell it. Go to wisdompanel.pxf.io/ccpod to learn more about your 4-legged friend. That's wisdompanel.pxf.io/ccpod. Suggs went on to say, quote, "Their actions were the cause of their untimely death," end quote. After everyone made their statements, Judge Harris called for a short recess. He took a 15-minute break to consider what the loved ones said in their impact statements. When he returned to the courtroom, he told the loved ones that they were never going to get an answer as to why Mr. Suggs did what he did. I have a clip on Judge Harris addressing Suggs that I'm going to play for you guys.
I do not know what happened, and there's only 5 people who knows what happened that night. 4 of them are in a cemetery right now, and you're the only one here. So with that being said, the next question I have for myself is, what is the appropriate sentence, and how to craft a sentence to think about rehabilitation and the possibility of you returning to the community, but also giving the victims the justice they deserve and accountability for your actions. I read your victim witness statements, and you had 26 of them, and as I read through them, I'm going to be honest with you, as an African-American male, it broke my heart because every single one of them talked to you and talked about you as a loving father, which I have no doubt you are. I have no doubt about that. As someone who would give the clothes off of your back to them, and I have no doubt you would. As a family man, I have no doubt that you are a family man. And I sat and weighed that story of who that person is, the story of someone who can kill 4 people, drive them around the city, dump them in a cornfield, and leave to Arizona, leave them never to be found but by the fortune of a field hand finding them. Those 2 people are different people, and there's no way I could reconcile who they are.
Judge Harris said it was clear during the trial that Suggs expressed no remorse for what had happened. Judge Harris handed down a sentence of 1,244 months to be served consecutively. He said, quote, "Each one of these individuals deserve that you serve time for each one of them," end quote. He directly addressed Suggs saying, quote, "You cast blame on others, and this is a sentence you now have to take responsibility for," end quote. According to an article from Fox 9, after the sentencing was imposed and the court was adjourned, loved ones of the victims and Suggs exchanged words. The groups were escorted out separately by some of the 12 sheriff's deputies assigned to the courtroom for security purposes. Anton Suggs is serving his time at Minnesota Correctional Facility, St. Cloud, and will have to serve a minimum of just over 69 years. Suggs' anticipated release date is October 30th, 2090. He will be 107 years old. Nidajah was a beautiful, vibrant, loving mother, sister, daughter, niece, granddaughter, and genuine friend to those she extended herself to. She had a zeal for life and an energy that radiated and lit up the space around her. Matthew was a loving father, son, brother, and friend who was always on the move, and he questioned everything. He was creative and gifted musically. Those who knew him well would tell you he knew every song written by Frank Sinatra, and if you stuck around long enough, he might even break into song. Jasmine was a loving mother, daughter, sister, and friend. Jasmine's zest for life and infectious smile captivated everyone around her. She loved fashion, all things Audrey Hepburn, and was very involved in community activism. Those lucky enough to call her a friend knew her to be fiercely loyal and someone they could always count on. Lois was a son, father, brother, and friend. He loved art and music. He was a sweet, friendly, and funny guy, leaving behind the broken hearts of his 2 sons, parents, siblings, and many friends. And that's the case of the St. Paul quadruple homicide. A tragic murder that we may never know the real answer as to why Suggs pulled the trigger so many times, taking the lives of 4 loving souls. He still claims that he was a victim and that he acted in self-defense and was wrongfully convicted. This case is one that should have gained more national media coverage, especially given the fact that the FBI and ATF were involved and that it crossed state lines. But unfortunately, the day after their bodies were discovered, the missing persons case of Gabby Petito would soon grip the nation by storm. These tragic murders would take a back seat. And yet, 2 years later, Suggs goes on trial and is convicted and sentenced for this quadruple homicide. And it was like a ghost town from the media. How did we not hear anything about it where, except for if you were local to the Minnesota and Wisconsin area? The lack of coverage in this case is one of the reasons why I started this podcast to begin with. I didn't start it for entertainment purposes, but because I truly care about the victims and the cases, and the ones that are solved that people probably haven't heard of or aren't familiar with, they deserve to be covered. For the victims whose cases are unsolved, maybe we can find someone who, you share this with someone who shares it with someone else, who shares it with another person who is like, oh, something like this sounds familiar. And they might have a tip that they can call into the police. Or a missing persons case, maybe someone else, the same thing. You share it with someone who shares it with someone else and shares it with someone else, and they might have a missing persons tip. It's why I do it, not for the entertainment. And I hope that you guys can tell that, because that's what's important to me. Justice for the victims and their families, to give a voice to the voiceless, and hopefully we can give names to the nameless. You can listen to Crime Connoisseurs wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to follow on Instagram at Crime Connoisseurs. Click the link in the bio and fill out the form for any case suggestions you have. In the meantime, keep it classy, connoisseurs, and I'll catch you on the next case. Are you tired of settling for subpar cat food? It's time to upgrade your cat's dining experience with Smalls, the ultimate gourmet meal for your feline companion. Say goodbye to generic one-size-fits-all cat food. With Smalls, you can rest assured that your furry friend is getting the nutrition they deserve. Join the thousands of cat owners who have made the switch to Smalls and see the difference it can make in your cat's health and happiness. Treat your cat to the finest dining experience with Smalls. Visit smalls.sjv.io/ccpod now to order your first box. That's smalls.sjv.io/ccpod. Choose Smalls, because your cat deserves the best.